Number 3, the assignment, a global food crisis.
When we sent John Standmeyer out to talk about the global food situation and the issues that surround it, I never would have expected that John could come back with a picture like this. This photograph is complex, and there's an immediate emotional connection with the people in the photograph. It's a very sophisticated picture.
I could sense at the time that something fairly monumental was happening. The government subsidizes bread because a very large percentage of the population of Egypt lives in poverty. I wasn't quite aware of how deeply rooted poverty was in Egypt until I went there. I'd never been to Egypt before. I was inside the bread kiosk in this little metal box that was probably 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters. It was extremely loud, especially because it was a metal tinned aluminum box.
Standmeyer often records audio of places he photographs and does so in Cairo.
And I remember just setting the recorder up for maybe 10 minutes, just letting it run. And there was just 2 little narrow windows with a spine going through it. So it was sort of this, stereo vision of things going through each divide of the frame and sort of waiting for that human symphony to play out. A lot of people weren't actually happy that I was there because they viewed it as being something negative on their culture, and I would explain to them, that I'm not trying to look at the negatives of your culture. I'm trying to look at the realities of our collective human existence.
Over the last 4 years, food prices have risen around the globe, pushing 75 million people into poverty. To document the devastating effects of shrinking food stockpiles, Standmeyer travels to 9 countries.
A story like this is heavily researched and heavily documented on a very wide level. It's brutal to have to let pictures go because you only have so much space to fit in the magazine. I think total was nearly 30,000 images. I don't know what actually ran in the magazine, but I think maybe 15 to 18 photographs.
John takes an incredible set of photographs. Astonishing. At the end of it, he turns to me and says, I have a little more time left on my budget. I haven't got it yet. This is okay. I know I can do better. I need to go back. He just absolutely will not stop until he believes he has it absolutely right.
The challenge was to try to present to the readers the magnitude of what it is for a vast percentage of our human population, the struggle to feed themselves, so that the consciousness is tapped, so that we're aware that we may have plenty where we are, but in vast areas of our planet there isn't that much plenty. The question becomes, can you continue to act as though what is happening over there, whether it's across a body of water or across a mountain range or across an invisible line that humans create in dirt, say that it doesn't affect me because I'm living over here?
Number 2, the assignment, life on the Kamchatka Peninsula. Since he was a child, Randy Olson has been drawn to taking pictures.
I think I became interested in photography when I realized how interested my father was in it. So as a young child, I was always very proud that my father was a photographer.
And 4 decades later, Olson's love of the outdoors and photography blends into an assignment in Kamchatka, Russia. This remote corner of the world nurtures one of the most productive salmon runs on Earth.
Getting around Kamchatka is difficult because it's about the size of California, but it only has 130 kilometers of roads. So to get to the areas that I needed to get to involved either Mi-8 helicopters, or there were a couple of commercial flights up into the higher reaches of Kamchatka. So, I mean, those are your options. So travel is difficult. The area that the photograph of the brown bear came from was a 2-hour flight by MI-8, which is, the size of this room. And then a 2-hour flight back. It's $3,000 an hour, something like that. So these are expensive, remote places to get to. Except for Kamchatka and Bristol Bay, Alaska, salmon production in the entire Pacific Rim has dwindled to 3 to 4% of historic production.
This figure includes both wild and farm-raised salmon, but still represents an alarming decline. To understand the relationship between the dozens of species dependent on salmon and the importance of Kamchatka, Olson photographs both people and wildlife. This includes Kamchatka's massive brown bears.
This is also the place where a photographer who's done work for National Geographic was eaten completely. And he was warned that there was a rogue bear. They're actually not very good fishermen. You see why they need to have this abundance of salmon, because they run and they try and step on one. That's their fishing plan, is to come charging in and hope they feel a fish under their foot.
To capture underwater shots of the salmon, Olson rigs a camera with a remote connection to his laptop.
I took the underwater camera for the fish and I moved it over to a spot where I felt this one grizzly bear felt that it was the best spot to fish. To make a photograph, that bear had to charge up to within 6 feet of me, which can be a little disconcerting. Even though they're not looking at you as a food source, when they're charging up and they're that big, it's still a little scary. So I've got a camera underwater and I can see the fish on the screen, but I've got grizzly bears attacking each other 15 feet away that I'm photographing with a 600 millimeter lens.
I don't know that I would want to be this close to a brown bear in Kamchatka, even though he is fishing. Randy made this picture because he's a seasoned veteran photographer. And he's taking these photographs of a bear in a way I've never seen a brown bear before.
That bear came up to that camera one time during that week, and I got 2 frames, one of which is the one that ran in the magazine.
Both frames are fascinating photos, but the editors choose to publish only one.
The first frame was the bear looking around and almost feeling around for fish. So it's the paw coming very close to the camera, but then the head is up above the water. When you see that paw underwater, the bear is looking right at me, from just a few feet away. The second frame was after it stuck its head in the water, looking around to see if it could see any fish, and when it didn't, it moved off.
This picture will probably even go so far as to stand the test of time. It's that interesting. It's that provocative. It's that original.